All right, folks, time for our second live hour, NewsOne Now on TV1. Our stories. U.S. Senate welcomes newly elected members, but will they hire black folks, Latinos, and others? There's a diversity problem on Capitol Hill, and we're not just talking about those people who are elected. We'll discuss that next on NewsOne Now. Will activism be the path forward for Black America in the Trump era? We'll talk with Tef Poe, co-founder of Hands Up, about that as well. Look forward to that. Plus, how the election victory of Donald Trump is heating up the battle for women's reproductive justice. We'll talk with sexologist Michelle Hope. And of course, What the Hell Thursday. We got some crazy stories lined up for you. Plus, our question of the day in the second hour: who should win the NAACP Image Award for Entertainer of the Year? Y'all ready for more heat? I think the panel is. It's time to bring the funk. NewsOne Now on TV1. In a few weeks, newly elected U.S. senators will take their oaths of office on Capitol Hill, but just how many of them will include staffers of color among their new hires? The Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies released a report in 2015 dissecting the diversity or lack thereof among Hill staffers. While people of color make up over 36% of the U.S. population, they have just 7% of top Senate staffers. In 2015, there were 336 top Senate staffers. Just 24 people of color. Yes, 24. 12 Asian Americans lead that group. Latinos have the second highest amount with 7 staffers. And check this out, y'all. Out of all Senate staffers, 336. Black people, Native Americans, 5. That's it. Out of 336. 5. The report also notes Senate offices representing states with large Hispanic and African-American populations like California, Texas, New York, and Florida tend to hire few senior staffers of color. Really? The 6 newly elected U.S. senators from California, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, New Hampshire, and Nevada each have 3 top staff positions to hire: Chief of Staff, the Legislative Director, and Communications Director. This means a total of 18 highly paid, highly visible jobs. To the best of our knowledge, some of these spots have been filled, and the only person of color so far is the Communications Director for Senate-elect Cortez Masto of Nevada. So what does this mean for Black and Latinos heading into 2017? Joining us, Spencer Overton, President of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, also a law professor at Georgetown University. Don Cravens, Senior Vice President for Policy with the National Urban League. Don also served as Chief of Staff for Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu's office here in D.C. Of course, our panel as well. We have human rights activist Jamira Burley, Ralph Chittams. He is with the D.C. Republican Party. Amber J. Phillips, activist as well. So, Spencer, Don, first of all, for anybody who's watching and listening,
right?
Why should they care? Why does this matter? Diversity among Senate staffers.
Roland, I'll say this. Thanks for having us on the program, and thanks for talking about this important issue. The Senate, the United States Senate, is the most powerful legislative body in the world. Our senators ratify treaties. Our senators confirm Supreme Court justices and judges all over the country. When those senators are making decisions that affect every American, if they are not being counseled, advised by their staff, and their staff doesn't look like the states they represent, then in my opinion, they're not being adequately counseled or advised, right? And so Spencer's report talks about those states that are predominantly people of color, a minority, or have high populations, like the state of Mississippi, my home state of Louisiana. When those men and women who are elected to represent those states don't have men and women on their staffs who look like their states, I don't think they're making decisions based upon the opinions of all the people of that state.
And you know, these numbers are particularly bad in terms of black folks, right? So we've got basically 300 spots. If each senator has 3 spots, 100 senators, each has 3, right? Out of that 100, only 2 of those, out of the 300, only 2 are black. Both of those are Republicans. There are no Democrats who are black on a personal staff of a senator. So no black Democratic chiefs of staff, no black Democratic legislative directors, no black Democratic communications
I'll
directors.
put that in perspective.
And this is, go ahead.
I'll put it in perspective. I was hired to be a chief of staff in 2013 by Senator Mary Landrieu. Since that hiring, Roland, on the Democratic side, they've not hired another African-American chief of staff, they've not hired an African-American legislative director, and they've not hired an African-American comms director. No Democratic senator has made any of those hires since I was hired in 2013. That's an embarrassment, it's unacceptable, and we had a major election. The Democrats thought they were going to take the Senate back. The odds were they were. I question whether or not some of the reason they didn't take it back was because they don't have people on their staffs who even can identify with the people they're asking to vote for.
Well, actually, one of the reasons why, and trust me, let me go ahead and say this right now, because, you know, I will call anybody out, to all of the Democratic and progressive organizations. Y'all about to feel some heat come January, after January 4th, because to this particular point here, I've made it clear, black folks, I'm not interested in black folks being political sharecroppers. I'm not a Democrat or Republican, so I can call anybody out because I don't give a damn. But the bottom line is here, when you talk about this here, this is an example of where I say where Democrats practice income inequality, because not only are these high-paid positions, there's also positions where you go on to other positions in government. Folks might run for office as well, but they also go into corporate America as well because of that. And so when you're not hiring them in these positions, now you're also not diversifying corporate America.
That's right.
And you can also be confirmed, right, for an agency, right, to be a commissioner at the FCC if you've already been a part of the Senate, and you know it's easier to be confirmed. So also, you know, going on to agencies is a pathway.
When I had the white supremacist Jameer on the show, Richard Spencer, he was talking about, oh, how the white men are underrepresented. I'm like, dude, look behind me. Trust me, you're not being underrepresented in this building behind me or the White House, and that's the sort of this illusion. And this is an example of what I keep trying to talk about in this country, how we are frozen out of positions of power. And not just the position, but it's the position after that that also impacts it. Because if you're an African American and you're a senior staffer in the Senate, then you are in a small minority, and then all of a sudden you now get opportunities. You can also expand the field when you go somewhere else.
No, I fully agree, and I think it starts not just with the hiring process of staffers on the Senate and the House. It's also about internships. Like when you think about who has the ability to come to Washington, D.C. to actually get Hill experience, it's not minorities, it's not young people who parents have to help to support them through their college education. So we have to start at the very level of even internships. Like the White House has internships, but I knew black people who couldn't do a White House internship because they couldn't afford to live in D.C. and work full-time with no income. So we have to start from the very bottom.
Hold on, let me say this here. Hold on, before you make that point.
Right.
Because this is also what happens, and it's happened at the town hall we did in Ohio when I challenged Hillary Clinton on the issue of trade jobs, skill jobs. And I'm like, no. I don't want to hear about apprenticeship. No. There are black people who right now who are qualified for the senior positions.
No, I fully agree.
Right. No, what I'm saying is what happens though is folks back here will automatically go to the intern, which is the bottom of the ladder, which means that, oh, that's a 10, 12-year process.
Yeah.
No. I'm saying there are people who can do the job right now.
Right. That's absolutely right. And in terms of, go back to this Democratic piece, right? Look at a state like Maryland. Chris Van Hollen, right? Maryland, 30% African American. Democratic primary, about 40% African American. Van Hollen received all these black endorsements from county executives, et cetera, over Donna Edwards, who is black, right? Chris Van Hollen is here. He's got 3 spots. We can't find any black person out of the 40 million people in this country who's qualified to be in one of those top 3 positions.
And there are organizations that are actually getting those applications. I mean, you have Inclusive based here in D.C. that actually get individuals from diverse backgrounds to submit their resumes for both Republican and Democratic offices. The problem is these people aren't hiring them. And so it's the accountability mechanism.
Additionally, you have folks like Jessica who is involved with Inclusive and over.
Jessica,
Jessica Bird, who is
somebody at home don't know Jessica.
I'll let them know.
Go ahead.
Her name is Jessica Bird. She's over 3 Point Strategies, who is literally doing God's work of ensuring that we have folks of color, specifically Black women, who are represented at the state and local level through internships, through jobs, and through being elected leaders. And I think we all need to, and this additional piece that it's not just enough to have diversity, right? We need to have diversity in thoughts. We need to have people from different sexualities. We need trans people in these positions as well, and people who don't believe, who believe in different ways of how to bring change to the government.
Now, under the heading of leading from the front, it's important that we need to give Speaker Ryan some credit.
Agreed.
Because he just hired, Jonathan Burks,
an African-American
to be his chief of staff.
Yes.
So, hopefully with that appointment, leading from the front, others, below him will follow his lead and hire African Americans into these positions.
So when it comes to these Senate positions, is there an entity who should we be calling out?
The Democratic and Republican senators here. These senators need to hire people of color, and they need to hire Black folks. Now, they'll say, hey, I've got a state director who's a person of color. The people, person who's the face to the folks at home. They need people here in Washington, D.C. making policy decisions, right? Another thing is you have this new class of folks who are people of color. We got 3 people of color in terms of this new class of senators, right?
3 women.
And three women. And the problem is if they don't hire people of color, it's like a pass for everyone else. Everyone else says, well, I don't need to hire a person of color.
But also what
right?
that does, though, is unfortunately what it does is it forces the person of color to have to do the hiring. And so here's my deal. Okay, if the person of color doesn't do the hiring, I'm not going to let somebody white off the hook.
No, that's true. That's true.
Well. So I'm just saying, because what often happens, like in the NFL, we depend upon the Black coach to be the ones who bring in other Black coaches, and other folks don't have to do it. Final comment, Don.
Roland, I'll say this. There is a pipeline for senior leadership. There's a House of Representatives where there are African-American chiefs of staff, African-American communications directors, African-American LDs. So if I'm a senator and I'm looking for a qualified person, all I got to do is walk across the street and talk to some of my delegation. Hey, do you have an African-American candidate? I want to interview an African-American candidate for chief of staff. Can you recommend someone? So this pipeline issue that these white senators have been talking about, it's not true. There is a pipeline of qualified African-Americans who can do these jobs.
All right. So here's what we'll do. You should say, okay, here are the 6 names, and then here are their numbers.
Mm-hmm. Should there be a Rooney Rule?
The Joint Center has been talking about that, and that's what our recommendation to the senators. When you interview 3 people for chief of staff, you should include in that candidate pool an African American, a Latino, an Asian American.
All right. So all you got to do. So what I want names, I want phone numbers, and then we'll give it out.
Right. Recommendations are out there. Folks at home, frankly, need to reach out to their senators and say, hey, this is a priority.
Yeah? So from one of y'all, all you gotta do is send an email.
Okay.
Here's the name, here's a number, I take care of the rest.
All right.
All right.
And Roland, we're going to be on Capitol Hill the first week of January 5th. The National Urban League is going to convene Black staffers and any member who wants to come talk about these issues. And we're going to bring the discussion. As you said the last time I was on this program, Black folks have to start holding these elected officials accountable.
Simple as that. Gentlemen, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up next on NewsOne Now, we'll hear about the battle for women's reproductive rights with a Donald Trump as president. What will that mean? We'll talk with sexologist Michelle Hope. Also, Tepo will join us talking about the path forward for activism in the Trump administration. And our question of the day, who should win the NAACP Image Award Entertainer of the Year? Nominees are Beyonce, Viola Davis, Regina King, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or Chance the Rapper. Jameer, calm down. The number to call is 855-301-1583, 855-301-1583. We'll take your phone calls on that later in the show. 14 after the hour, NewsOne Now on TV1.